Welcome to the Backyard Professor Responds videos. I'm going to do a little bit of musing tonight, and it could be amusing for you. But after looking into Colonel Alexander and some of his approaches to the UAP phenomenon, explaining that this isn't just a single discipline that we're studying, and I get it, the scientists, the government, the secret agencies that are keeping the information from us are interested most in the technology factor. But we now know that there's a lot more to these than meets the eye. We have various theories of, are they from this planet? Are they from interstellar space? Are they from outer space? Are they from other dimensions? Are they just, as Jung said, from our own psyche, etc.? So there's a lot of very interesting material to discuss. I want to share a particular angle with you tonight, just as sort of an exploration. No, this is probably not new material. It's probably some that some of you have heard already. Some of you might not have. And so this is basically for a discussion's sake. I have a few clips that I'm going to share. And one is from Edgar Mitchell, one of the NASA astronauts. Another one is from another gentleman who invented the microchip that we all use in our computers. Another one is from one of the great one of the great UAP podcasters, Richard Dolan, and I will intersperse my comments throughout as I have time, and then I will share a brief idea from the UFO of God, Chris Bledsoe's book, which I just finished this morning, and I will be presenting a discussion on that tomorrow night on my BYP live show, Sunday nights at 6 o'clock. So let's get started with this, and let me share the screen, and we'll see if I can get, not that one, but let's listen to what Edgar Mitchell has to say. He was one of the astronauts who did make it to the moon. Kind of interesting. Let me make sure this is going to show. Let me make, yep. And you don't want to see my handsome mug. Oh, whoops. No. Let's blotch me out entirely. All right. Let's see what this gentleman has to say.
And it begins with the quantum property that when particles are in a process together and they go apart from each other, they maintain their correlation regardless of where they go. And that also has spawned non-locality, which means that this happens at faster than the speed of light. And so the speed of light is not a fundamental with regard to consciousness and the propagation of consciousness. So here we are in the 21st century, 500 years after Descartes, 400 years after Newton and Kepler, and we now realize that we should be describing our universe instead of just matter and energy, which comes out of Newtonian physics, but we must describe our universe as matter, energy, and awareness, which is the bottom of consciousness, as the properties of our universe. So we have added a major fundamental to the nature that we didn't really know until the 20th century.
I thought that was quite interesting. This theme of consciousness is coming out, and David B. Alexander, Colonel Alexander, mentioned that in one of his interviews. And the reason why that this is probably going to gain great traction is simply because, and I'm trying to find this, I swear to goodness, I heard this I'm watching so many different programs trying to learn the ins and outs of this phenomenal issue that's facing our humanity right now, and it will be here for a long time to come, regardless of what happens this November 13th. We might have another setback, but I don't think it's going to be a defeat at all. None of us are going to stop trying. So we're going to keep learning and giving out information and analysis and philosophy and science and religion and history, etc., because there's so much to cover. One of the descriptions of the craft, of the alien craft, claimed that when they went inside, there was no propulsion system at all. There's no wings, there's no engine, there's no motor, there's nothing inside it. And this is fundamentally impossible. And from our scientific understanding at this point, it's woo-woo to us to suggest that the aliens are flying using their consciousness. Now, one of the artistic descriptions and many, many descriptions, I should say depictions, and the various descriptions of the aliens are their larger heads. Big eyes and larger heads. So their brain capacity could be much greater than ours. So their consciousness power could be much more tapped into the universal consciousness that the ancient Eastern mystics have advocated is real and in existence for the last several millennia, and Western science has cut itself off from that type of study because we love to measure. That's the basis of our physics, is measurement, quantity, length, height, width, depth, etc. Consciousness has been all but ignored, and of course the scientists have been very leery about getting into it. So this particular idea from an actual NASA astronaut who spent his life studying the consciousness after he came back from the moon, Edgar Mitchell, is really interesting. I personally heard him when I met him in Las Vegas years ago say that, yes, we know the UAPs are real. I've seen them. They do exist. So that's one such view. Let me stop this screen and share the screen with another interview that I thought was utterly stunning. This is very interesting how this is discussed. Federico Faggin. Let me make sure it shows. Yep, it's on. So here we go. And I will stop it a couple of times to share some insights, some ideas that I have. This is stunningly impressive.
When we study physics, we must go beyond the self-imposed limits of what a discipline can call reality. That changes everything. I'm a physicist, and therefore I study how physical reality works with a sense that that's all there is. I was also expecting if I did everything right, I should be happy. But I was not happy. One night I wake up and all of a sudden, out of my chest, this beam of energy is coming from me. The essence of what I thought that I am changed from this way to that way. I decided that's what I want to do for the rest of my life, unite physics and spirituality. If you look at yourself, what is the deepest longing that you have? The deepest longing that I have myself is to know myself, to know why am I here? What is this universe for? To know. Consciousness is the capacity of one to know itself. And it is in this one wants to know itself that there is the joining of physics and spirituality. Let me explain.
Now, this is very cool, and it's probably going to be very controversial, but there's no question that these skeptics can't say, well, he isn't the real deal. This is the man that invented the microchip that absolutely everybody with computers is using, the Intel microchip. He is a top-notch world-class scientist and physicist. He's got the credentials and the patents to prove it. And yet he had an experience that broadened him, opened him up and out into a deeper grasp of reality that the vast majority of us have not experienced. And I get it. There's going to be some people who say, well, yeah, that's just all woo-woo. It is to us who are in ignorance of that experience. His explanation of this is really worth paying attention to. There's about a 10-minute clip here. Because of copyright purposes, I can't play you the whole clip without breaking it up with some comments, because I am repurposing this. Hopefully, my comments will also be relevant too. For those of you who don't like that style, don't watch the video. That would be my suggestion. For the rest of us, we're going to learn and explore together. So let's see what this gentleman has to say. And his interviewer is very good too.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Know Thyself. Today we're sitting down with a physicist, inventor, and entrepreneur. Everyone watching this discussion is doing so using the silicon gate technology our guest today invented. Chips evolved from his first commercial microprocessor. He was also the first to invent touchpads and touchscreens. He went on to build neural network architecture in the 80s, attempting to create consciousness through computers. He is probably one of the most well-rounded idealists alive. He embodies an incredibly rare combination of hard-nosed, scientifically informed thought with direct introspective insights into the primacy of consciousness. We'll be exploring what is consciousness, why it cannot be explained from the materialist view, his emerging new theory that changes the idea of who we are in a fundamental way and restores meaning and purpose to the universe that materialism has essentially denied. We live in a time where the collective awareness and understanding around fundamental questions of reality, such as science, consciousness, meaning, and more, are transitioning, they're deepening, they're being revolutionized, and it's an exciting time to be alive. When wanting to understand how the physical universe works and its limits and what's beyond it, I don't know if I could have a better person be sitting in discussion with today than someone who is an individual at the forefront, truly with the cutting edge knowledge to synthesize our understanding of science, consciousness, and life. Federico Faggin, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here, Andre. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Like I said in the intro, you really have this unique, rare combination of the scientific understanding and the limits of the physical universe with also the interiority and personal experience. And I would actually love to just jump straight to your kind of awakening experience that you had that really was the pivot, the shift from being a materialist scientist into exploring consciousness in a much more fundamental way. So could you walk us through your experience at that moment?
Yeah, I need to.
Now, what I like about this sincerely, and the reason why I chose this to do a commentary on the first few minutes of this opening conversation, that's a little bit over an hour, hour and a half, that I would strongly recommend you watch, is this man is the real deal. It's a rare thing when you get a valid scientist, such as this gentleman here, such as Gary Nolan, etc., who end up developing their own spirituality. Now, that's a taboo word in science. Nobody likes it because it's not tangible. Now, the mistake that is being made is they're saying if it's not tangible, it's not real. And that is pure baloney because of the idea of our minds. Our minds are not tangible. And the scientists love to imagine that their minds are so bright that some of them wanted to be called brights at one point. Yeah, Richard Dawkins, etc. They believe they have minds, but they can't measure it. They can't weigh it. They don't know what color it is, etc. It's not a quantity. It's a quality. And this is a very important part of science that Western science has left out, and it's coming back now. And it's coming back to the scientists. And so there's some hope for us peons who also say, hey, I wouldn't mind getting in on this. And you'll understand why I say it that way as we listen to this very fabulous scientist who has turned into a tremendous asset potentially for UAP research. Let's keep watching.
Give you perhaps a little bit
Sure.
of background, because I'm a physicist, and therefore I study how physical reality works, and with a sense that that's all there is, and that's really pretty much what science today is telling us about the reality. And I had accepted that that must be true, and I was also expecting that if I did everything right, quote unquote, whatever that means, I should be happy. And that did not turn out that way. In fact, I did everything right, according to the book, but I was not happy, and I was pretending to be happy. And it was only because I realized that I was pretending to be happy. And I have learned, being an entrepreneur, I had learned to take responsibility for what happened in my life, that I put my foot down and said, no, I must understand why I'm not happy. In those days, I was studying consciousness, but I was working on neural networks.
I really thought this struck hard home with me for a very interesting reason. I was in my teenage years when I decided that I'm going to be happy. It's a choice. And this is something that hard for me to grasp. People actually don't realize. I actually ran into a lady today at the gas station. I opened the door for her, and she walked through, and she was middle-aged, a little bit frumpy. Went ahead and got my stuff, paid for it, walked out. And as I was walking out, she's right behind me. And I opened the door again, and I said, hey, come on out into my office today. We've turned on the really nice lights, and it's a beautiful day. And she said, no, it's not. And went storming right by me. Now, that's a choice. You can wake up on Monday mornings, and you can say, oh, another Monday. I hate Mondays. That's a choice. Your happiness is a choice. And the mystic way of looking at this is that if you are having trouble in life, if things just aren't working out, if you were fired from your job, and I have been there, and that is difficult on a man because our identification is with our jobs, so to speak. We need that identity. So to have that yanked out from under you is difficult to go through. Or you lose a loved one, or you wreck the brand new car you bought and your insurance decides not to cover you. Any myriad number of items, and it just disgruntles you. I do know people, and this is so unfortunate. I mean, they're friends who take years to get over the fact that they wrecked their new car and the insurance wouldn't cover it, totaled it. $28,000 shot, lost. Well, one of my very fun things that I've done in my life is I listened to the Bill Moyers interviews with the world-renowned mythologist Joseph Campbell back in 1987 and 88, I believe, is when it aired. You can get them now they're on YouTube. Very powerful interviews. And at one point, Joseph Campbell in those interviews said, what is the essence of life? It is loss. You go, wait, that doesn't ring right. But it is right. You will lose. You will lose money. You will lose time. You will lose property. You will lose your grandfather's watch that was handed down to you in full trust as a heritage piece for you to care for. You will lose whatever. You will lose your doctorate dissertation defense. You will, the one thing I can't lose is weight, which sucks. That's the one thing I want to lose, you know, but loss, life is loss, loss, loss. And the proper response to that loss is yes, because we're on a journey. Now, that is the intent here, is to lead us to enlightenment. So we lose opportunities in the UAP community to see real evidence. And we get skeptical, we get cantankerous, we turn pure skeptic. No, I've lost enough time waiting for this, you know. I get all that. I truly do, because I'm there with you. But the answer is not nearly half as fun as the journey. And part of the journey is looking into various other disciplines like I'm doing with here in this video today. So let's keep going, because this is important, what he describes, in my opinion.
I was studying books in neuroscience, and I wanted to understand how come that we are conscious. You know, the neuroscientists don't tell us how we're conscious. They explain, they explain how we work by electrical signals and biochemical signals in the brain. And I didn't see how I could possibly get sensations and feelings, what philosophers call qualia, out of electrical signals. And so I was really curious. Being a scientist and being also a technologist, I wanted to understand how I could program a computer to be conscious. And the more I thought, the more impossible it was, because there is nothing in physics that tells you how to convert electrical signals or bits in a computer into sensations and feelings. So the core was, what are sensations and feelings, which is how we experience life. And so it was in this climate where I was unhappy, which is also a problem of consciousness. I wanted to understand what consciousness is. And it happened one night, 1990, was Christmas holidays, was skiing up in the Sierras, Tahoe, with my family. And one night I wake up midnight, was thirsty, went to get a glass of water. Then I went back to bed, just waiting to fall asleep again. And all of a sudden, out of my chest, this beam of energy, white scintillating light, is love. But is a love that it was 10,000 times, 50,000 times, who knows, stronger than anything that I've ever experienced, is coming from me. And my consciousness is in this rush of energy. And is love, joy, and peace. Peace, I've never had felt that peace. I was always trying to get somewhere, was never happy where I was. But this is me, that's home. This is me. I am that. Actually, I am this instead of that. This that comes out of me. And then this energy, all of a sudden, is everywhere. And this white scintillating light, my consciousness is in that light. And so now I am observing myself. So I'm the observer of myself. This energy, because this love was there, this joy and this peace was there as well. And then a thought forms. Wow, a thought. But I already got what the thought was trying to say. The thought was, oh, this stuff is what everything is made of. But these are symbols. What before that thought, there was the understanding that the thought expressed. And then that was the end of it. My body was vibrating, like the cells of my body were resonating with what was going on. So body, mind, emotions, and the connection with everything was all in this holistic experience. So I was one observing itself with my point of view. That's what I'm saying now. But at that time, I had exactly the sense without the words to say what I just said.
Wow. That happens to a pure scientist. So my hope is really in listening to that, because I am not a scientist. I do like to read it and study it. But man, if he can have that, maybe there's hope for some of us lesser lights who can also have that kind of an experience. And I get there's some people who would not want to have that experience because it would terrify them or it would change their worldview, and they're perfectly happy and comfortable in their worldview right now, which is so very limited and limiting. We all know this is not an anti-science diatribe, but we all know that science is incomplete. It will never reach totality and finality. All of the good scientists have told us that. So our knowledge of the universe keeps expanding, or as the scripture says, ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Fascinating issue there. So let's keep listening to what this gentleman says next, what happened to him, or what he put together with his superb intellect with this stunning spiritual experience. This is beautiful stuff, I think.
So that explanation you just gave is incredible. I think it is possibly one of the only thing that could transform someone's rational mind of trying to, reduce life and phenomena into a series of explainable parts. You had the interiority experience, which, the Eastern wisdom traditions have been speaking to for millennia,
Mhm.
but haven't had the science to make it rigorous.
Yeah.
And what I really love, and having conversations around consciousness on this podcast, like Don Hoffman recently, and yourself and others, is that have these experiences, these meditative experiences that point to a reality that feels far more vast than anything we could deduce intellectually. And so the conjunction of both is really exciting to me. So let's keep diving deeper here. As this experience happened, how then did your rational mind start to pivot in what you were doing in the world? Because you were somebody who was very successful in the fruits of your labor in the classical physicalist model, right? And then from this experience afterwards, your energies and mind started to change into exploring more how consciousness could be more fundamental, constituent of the universe. And so from that moment forward, what were the coming years and decades? What did that look like for you as you started to change how you what you were studying in your field of expertise?
Yeah. The essence of what I am, what I thought that I am, changed from this way to that way. So before I thought I was separate from everything, from the universe. I thought that to prove something, you had to show a theorem and go through the logical proof of a theorem. That was the highest certainty that you could have, is by demonstrating a theorem. That knowing that came, I was asking what is consciousness. That it was, I realized much later that the asking was a prayer. I didn't know that I was praying, but I wanted to know. I have taken responsibility for myself and I wanted to know. I got the answer. That answer was so unbelievably impossible to imagine to me that, once you have this thing, you know that it must be true that way. This is direct experience of who you are. How more do you need? But of course, it doesn't give you a formula. It's not a number or a series of numbers. Is how we really know, how consciousness knows. And so that was for me, wow. My rational mind would probably, if it wasn't so powerful as an experience, I would have said, well, I need to see a psychiatrist now. If I was really believing the story that I was believing before, I would have probably said, I need to see a psychiatrist because something like this is crazy.
But that's the interesting shift, is that we go from needing to intellectually rationalize things to having the immediacy of the experience, which is self-evident.
Yeah.
It's like, so there's that gnosis, the intelligence of the body that knows.
Yeah.
That I feel like in the Western mind we've really lost being in touch with.
Of course. And that's the fundamental difference between the rational mind that wants to arrive at the truth. But you never arrive at the truth if you start with truth that are assumed to be true, which is the postulates that you start with. So it's foolish to believe that you can get to the truth if you start with truth that you cannot demonstrate. So, but our consciousness is the truth engine, is the one that can tell you whether it's true or not, but it doesn't give you the proof. And then you have to know also how to read your experiences. So it took a number of years of studying, but studying consciousness. How? By experiencing myself. That's the only way that you know consciousness. You don't read it. Books don't tell you what consciousness is on top of it. So I went through 20 years of personal work, starting with meditation, on and on and on. Teachers came and went, in this process. And it took about 20 years. So that takes us to about 2008 or so, 2009.
Okay, so this struck me really hard, and it was one of the reasons I want to share it with you, because I know this is some of my audience's experience as well. Is look behind me. And this is only one side of my room you're seeing with my library. I have another entire wall, double deep stacked books over there. And the rest of the wall, there's a door there to another room, and the rest of the wall over there, and then the very far corner. And then over here on the small wall next to the stair, I've got those books. I've been a bookworm my whole life, imagining that I am going to arrive at the truth, and this man just undermined all of that. Now, that's not to disparage book learning, but that's not the ultimate way to know. Because when you really stop and look at it, you pull a book out, here's a book, Science, Religion, and Mormon Cosmology by Eric Robert Paul. Man, was this book a rage in Mormonism back in the 1990s and 2000s. But it is this gentleman's research with his knowledge that I'm learning. I'm not directly experiencing the knowledge. I'm learning his position. And that is true for every single book that there is. Some of my favorite books on infinity, A.W. Moore, The Infinite. Fantastic book. Incredible. Kaplan and Kaplan, The Art of the Infinite. And I've got dozens of books on infinity. But that is not to know infinity. That is to know the philosophers, the artists, the scientists' interpretation of attempting to quantify infinity. George Cantor, for example, found that there are infinities above infinities above infinities, ironically enough. This is utterly so astonishing how infinity works, because it does not follow the regular rules of mathematics at all in any way. And then there's the philosophers, the logic of infinity. So now there's logic to an illogical concept of infinity, with which we still don't actually have any kind of physical examples of it existing in the universe, which is really amazing, because abstractly, we have an actual mathematics that deals with it, that follows certain rules and norms that is different from Newtonian mathematics and calculus and geometry and Riemann geometry, etc. Infinity doesn't follow the rules of typical classical math, and yet we have no physical infinity. Again, something that's not physically real, and yet critically important, especially when we attempt to couple together Einstein's cosmological theory of relativity and Bohr's quantum mechanics. The two don't mix. They break down mathematically when you try to do them together. So for something that's not physically real, it absolutely influences us. There's a fascinating paradox for you to think about. Finally, in light of all of this information, and I've just scratched the surface, and I will explore this consciousness issue more with you. There's some fantastic materials on consciousness and the various ins and outs of it, and how does it relate to our reality of our physical existence, because consciousness itself is not physical either. And yet we all have it, or you wouldn't be watching this program. You wouldn't be reading books. You wouldn't be believing the atheist Daniel Dennett when he says the consciousness doesn't really exist as such, and it's just a chimera of our brain state, etc., which is ludicrous according to other brain scientists that I've been looking into as well. So the issue is extremely complex. What does this call for? I can think of no better way to end this video than with whom I consider my friend. He doesn't know me from Adam. I know him a lot better than he knows me. I've been watching a lot of his videos. Someday I'd love to have Richard Dolan on my show. The man is incredible. He is a superb UAP historian, and he has a magnificent YouTube presence. His show is very, very interesting to watch. He's always the consummate scholar and gentleman. I really, really like him. But let me wrap up with this. And this is probably not going to be as appreciated as it should be. But in light of seeing such an incredible, valid, true scientist, physicist have a spiritual dimensional expansion in his life and mind, I think Richard Dolan is the perfect way to end this video. Let's see what he says. I want to make sure this is showing. Oh, no, it's not. Good. Oh, I've got to stop the screen. Yeah, let me stop the screen and reshare the screen. Boy, I'm glad I checked. Okay, here we go. Okay, Richard Dolan.
It's the humility to realize, okay, let's just take a breath and recognize there's a lot I don't know here. There are limits to what we are able to understand in this reality. And so for us to think, I'm going to dismiss any form of transcendental reality because it doesn't make sense to my understanding of science as it is right now. You talk about arrogance, foolishness, pride. It's just stupid. That's really what it is. To think, I will dismiss. I'm a logical positivist, and I will not accept any form of information that I cannot absolutely quantify. And it's like, come on, stop. You've got severe limits. We all have limits to what we're able to understand. So that's the beginning of wisdom. It's the humility to realize, okay, let's just take a breath and recognize there's a lot I don't know here. There are limits to what we are able to understand in this reality. And so for us to think, I'm going to dismiss any form of transcendental reality because it doesn't make sense to my understanding of science as it is right now. You talk about arrogance, foolish.
Yeah, I've already got that. So that's a short. Sorry, I kept replaying. He didn't stop it real abruptly like I do on my shorts. So anyway, that's the theme. Now, several scientists and high-up military personnel, people who are in the know, have been recently coming out and saying this, that we have a much broader context with the UAPs than just spacecraft physical instrumentation and laser guns and little green men. There is a whole lot more that has an interdisciplinary approach, which could be the best way for us to grasp this, to get ready for the full disclosure. The United States government wants to avoid catastrophic disclosure because they think that we public can't handle it. So they're doing a slow rollout, as if, to think that the government finally coming out and admitting, well, yes, there are UAPs. You really think everybody's going to believe that? No, not necessarily. So it's not up to the government, it's up to us. And that's what we're trying to do, is explore as many different facets as we have time on this utterly remarkable journey that we all find ourselves on. So thanks for watching the Backyard Professor Responds videos. I will return with more just as soon as I can. Tomorrow night live, I'm going to be exploring once again the UFO of God, Christopher Bledsoe book. And we will explore perhaps the most important part of the book from my point of view. And so I'm looking forward to having you there, and I will catch up to you. Until then, remember, get a good night rest and have a great day. Thanks for watching.